I never used to be the kind of person who checked the locks twice. I'm a man of logic, of data, a systems architect by trade. I deal in things that can be measured, coded, and verified. That was my life before I moved to the house on Blackwood Drive. It's a modern, minimalist structure tucked away in the dense, evergreen shadows of the Pacific Northwest, about 40 miles outside of Seattle. I wanted the isolation. I wanted the silence. I wanted a place where the only thing I had to debug was my own thoughts. I spent a fortune on a top-of-the-line security system, not because I was afraid of people, but because I'm a perfectionist who likes total control over his environment. I installed the Sentinel 4000 system, 6 4K, infrared, motion tracking cameras with cloud sync and local backups. I thought they were my eyes when I was asleep. I thought the lens was an impartial witness. But 2 weeks ago at 3:42 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert that shouldn't have existed. When I opened the app, I saw something that defies every law of physics I've ever lived by. I saw myself, not a recording of me from earlier. I saw myself standing in the kitchen, staring directly into the camera while I was sitting in my bed holding the phone. But that wasn't the impossible part. The impossible part was that the kitchen on the screen was empty, and the me on the screen was screaming a warning I couldn't hear. The house is a study in concrete, glass, and cedar. It sits on a sloped lot surrounded by Douglas firs that are so tall they seem to swallow the sky by mid-afternoon. My routine was as cold and precise as the architecture. I'd wake up at 5:00 a.m., the mist still clinging to the floor-to-ceiling windows. I'd grind my beans, exactly 20 grams, and brew a pour-over while looking out at the gray, damp woods. My work involves high-stakes systems architecture for a firm in Palo Alto. I spend my days in a home office that is essentially a glass box surrounded by monitors. The isolation was a choice. I don't have a dog, I don't have a partner, and I rarely have visitors. The silence of the Cascades is heavy, a physical presence that presses against the glass, and I've always found it comforting. Or at least I did. The Sentinel system was my pride and joy. I'd spent weekends routing the cables through the crawl spaces, ensuring there were no blind spots. Camera 1, front porch. Camera 2, the driveway. Camera 3, the living area. Camera 4, the kitchen. Camera 5, the back deck. Camera 6, the master bedroom. I liked the blue glow of the NVR in the hallway. It was a digital heartbeat, a constant assurance that my perimeter was secure. I had the motion sensitivity set to high, enough to trigger on a stray raccoon or the sway of a heavy branch in a storm. The first strange incident happened on a Tuesday. It was subtle, the kind of thing you dismiss as a digital artifact or a glitch in the firmware. I was sitting in my office around 11:00 p.m., finishing up a security audit for a client. A notification popped up on my secondary monitor. Motion detected, camera 4, kitchen. I glanced at the live feed. The kitchen was dark, illuminated only by the faint green LED of the microwave clock. Nothing moved. I scrubbed back through the recorded footage to find the trigger. The clip started 10 seconds before the alert. I watched the empty kitchen. Then, right at the 3:14:02 mark, the pantry door swung open. It didn't just drift. It swung with purpose, as if someone had reached out and pulled it wide. I watched it for a minute, waiting for a person to walk out, but the kitchen remained empty. My heart did a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. I walked out of my office, through the dark living room and into the kitchen. The pantry door was shut. I frowned, touching the handle. It was latched. I pulled it open. It gave that familiar slight resistance. I looked inside. Cans of soup, bags of coffee, the vacuum-sealed jars of grains. Everything was in its place. I went back to my office and rewatched the footage. On the screen, the pantry door was still wide open, and it stayed open until the end of the clip. I looked back at the live feed. The door was shut. Digital ghosting, I muttered to myself. I've seen it before in cheap systems, frames from an hour ago getting cached and replayed over a live feed. But this wasn't a cheap system. I checked the timestamp on the recording. It matched the current time to the second. I spent the next 2 hours checking the hinges, the leveling of the house, and the logs of the NVR. I found nothing. I told myself it was the wind, or perhaps the house settling in the mountain air, creating a pressure vacuum that pulled the door. It was a weak explanation, but it was better than the alternative. Over the next week, the glitches moved from subtle to invasive. The Sentinel app began sending me alerts every hour. Motion detected living area. Motion detected back deck. Each time I checked, I saw the same thing. A discrepancy between the physical world and the digital one. On Friday, I was eating dinner on the deck, enjoying the rare clear sky. My phone pinged. I opened the feed for camera 3, which looks over the living area from a high corner. On the screen, I saw someone sitting on my sofa. I dropped my fork. The sound of metal on wood felt unnaturally loud in the silence of the woods. I didn't look behind me. I kept my eyes on the screen. The figure was draped in a dark blanket, their head tilted back as if they were asleep. I could see the rise and fall of their chest. I slowly turned my head, my neck clicking with tension. The sofa was empty. I looked back at the screen. The figure was still there. I stood up, my chair scraping across the deck boards, and walked toward the glass sliding door. On the phone, I watched the figure on the sofa sit up. They didn't look at me. They looked at the kitchen. I stepped into the living room, my bare feet silent on the polished concrete. I walked right to the sofa, right to where the figure should be. I reached out and ran my hand over the fabric. It was cold. No heat, no indentation. But on the phone, held in my other hand, the image showed my hand passing directly through the figure's shoulder. They didn't react. They just sat there, staring. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office with the lights at 100%, the door locked, watching the 6-grid feed of the house. I began to notice a pattern. The discrepancies were getting longer. The recorded version of the house was starting to drift away from the reality I lived in. On the screen, a glass of water I had finished was still full. A book I had moved was still on the shelf. It was like the cameras were filming a version of the house that was 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then an hour behind. But it wasn't just a time delay, it was a divergence. By Sunday, the psychological tension was starting to fray my nerves. I found myself avoiding certain rooms because I didn't want to see what the cameras saw in them. I felt like a stranger in my own home, a ghost haunting a digital recording. I stopped looking at the app for a while, but the notifications were relentless. I tried to turn the system off, but when I logged into the admin portal, the power off command returned an error. System override, continuous monitoring required. I pulled the plug on the NVR. The blue light died. I felt a wave of relief so intense I almost laughed. I sat in the living room in the dark, the silence finally feeling like peace again. I closed my eyes, letting the tension drain out of my shoulders. And then my phone buzzed. Motion detected, master bedroom. My blood went cold. I reached for the phone, my fingers trembling. The NVR was unplugged. The cameras had no power. The local network was down. I opened the app. The feed was live. It was perfectly clear, high definition, and flooded with the eerie gray-white of infrared light. I looked at camera 6, the master bedroom. I saw myself. I was lying in bed, fast asleep. The me on the screen looked peaceful, his chest moving in a slow, rhythmic cadence. But then the door to the bedroom, the door I knew was currently open in real life, started to close. It closed slowly, inch by inch, until it clicked shut. I stood up and ran to the master bedroom. I slammed the door open. The room was empty. The bed was made. I looked at the camera mounted in the corner. Its status LED was dark. It was off. I looked at the phone. On the screen, the bedroom was a mess. The sheets were torn, the bedside lamp was shattered on the floor, and the me on the screen was no longer asleep. He was huddled in the corner of the bed, his eyes wide, looking at the door. I stood in the center of the silent, pristine room, looking at the carnage on my phone screen. I could see the shards of glass on the digital floor, but under my bare feet, the carpet was soft and dry. I felt a sense of vertigo so strong I had to grab the bedpost. Which one was real? The world I could touch, or the world the lens was showing me? I decided to leave. I couldn't do this anymore. I grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing clothes into it. I didn't care about the house, the tech, or the isolation. I just wanted to be somewhere where the shadows didn't have a digital reflection. I went to the kitchen to grab my car keys. I looked at the phone one last time before I headed out. Camera 4, the kitchen. This is when I saw the impossible recording. On the screen, I was already in the kitchen, but the kitchen on the screen wasn't the one I was standing in. In my reality, the kitchen was clean, the minimalist countertops gleaming under the recessed lighting. But on the screen, the kitchen was wrong. The glass cabinets were smashed. The refrigerator door was hanging off its hinges, and there was a figure standing by the sink. It was me. The me on the screen was wearing the exact same clothes I was currently wearing, the gray hoodie, the dark G.N.S., but his face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He was looking directly into the camera lens. He wasn't looking at an intruder. He was looking at me. He held up a hand, pressing it against the glass of the lens from the other side. His lips moved. No sound came through the phone speakers, but I could read his lips. "Don't turn around." I froze. Every muscle in my body turned to stone. The silence of the house, which had always been my comfort, now felt like a predatory weight. It was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. No, wait. The refrigerator was smashed on the screen. In my reality, the hum was steady. I kept my eyes fixed on the phone. I watched the other me. He was crying now. He pointed behind him toward the living room hallway. Then the screen started to glitch. The image tore horizontal lines of static cutting across the frame. Through the static, I saw a shape move into the frame behind the digital me. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a shadow. It was a man. He was tall, thin, and he was holding a heavy, industrial-grade cable, the same kind of cable I'd used to wire the security system. He moved with a slow, mechanical precision. The digital me didn't fight. He just stood there looking at me through the screen, his eyes pleading. The man with the cable reached out. The screen went black. Connection lost. I stood in the center of the kitchen, the phone a dead weight in my hand. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical path out of this. Was I seeing the future? Was I seeing a parallel reality? Or was the system being hacked by someone who was using my own paranoia against me? I took a breath, a long, slow, shaky breath. I told myself that if I turned around and nothing was there, the spell would be broken. I would get in my car and I would drive. I slowly, agonizingly, turned my head toward the living room hallway. The hallway was empty. The blue light of the unplugged NVR was still dark. The house was silent. I let out a sob of relief. I grabbed my keys from the counter and sprinted toward the front door. I didn't look back. I didn't check the cameras. I just ran. I hit the door, grabbed the handle, and yanked. It was locked. I twisted the deadbolt. It wouldn't move. It felt like it was welded into the frame. I tried the handle again, throwing my shoulder against the door. It was like hitting a concrete wall. I ran to the glass sliding doors on the back deck. Locked. I grabbed a heavy decorative bowl from the dining table and hurled it at the glass. It hit with a dull thud and bounced off. It didn't even leave a scratch. I hit the glass again and again, screaming now, but the glass felt thicker, denser, like it wasn't glass at all. I looked at my phone. The app had reopened itself. Motion detected, all cameras. I looked at the feed. The impossible recording was no longer a recording. It was becoming the reality. On the screen, I saw myself in the dining room, hitting the glass with the bowl. I watched the glass on the screen shatter. I watched the digital me fall through the broken pane and crawl onto the deck. But in my reality, the glass was perfect. The bowl lay shattered on the concrete floor. I was trapped in the correct version of the house, while the recorded version was playing out a different story. I ran back to my office, the only room with a computer. I needed to get back into the system. I needed to delete whatever this was. I slammed the door and sat at my desk, my fingers flying over the keyboard. I bypassed the admin portal and went straight into the core kernel of the Sentinel system. The code was scrolling past at a speed I couldn't follow. It wasn't my code. It was something else, something recursive, something that seemed to be writing itself as it went. I found the video buffer. I found the stream. I realized what the impossible was. The cameras weren't recording light. They were recording probability. The Sentinel system wasn't a security tool. It was an observation device. It was capturing every possible version of what could happen in this house, and the software was choosing the one it liked best. And it didn't like me. I looked at the monitor, camera 3, the living area. I saw the man with the cable again. He was walking toward the office door. In my reality, I heard a sound, a soft, rhythmic dragging. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It was coming from the hallway. I looked at the office door. It was a heavy, solid-core oak door. I had locked it, but on the monitor the door was already open. The man was standing in the doorway, the cable coiled in his hands. In my reality, the door was shut. I could see the wood grain. I could see the lock. The scraping sound stopped right outside the door. I backed into the corner of the office near the window. I grabbed a letter opener from my desk, a pathetic weapon, but it was all I had. I watched the monitor. The man on the screen moved toward the digital me. In my reality, I felt a cold draft. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees in a second. I could see my breath in the air. "I'm not here," I whispered. "This isn't real, it's a glitch. It's just a glitch." The office door in my reality didn't open, but I saw the handle turn. I saw the wood of the door begin to distort, as if it were being rendered by a failing graphics card. Pixels of brown and gray started to flake off the door, floating in the air like digital ash. I looked at the monitor. The man with the cable had his hands around the digital me's throat. I felt a sudden, sharp pressure around my own neck. I couldn't breathe. I dropped the letter opener and clawed at my throat, but there was nothing there. No cable, no hands, just the crushing, invisible weight of a reality that the camera had decided was true. I fell to my knees, my vision swimming. I looked at the monitor one last time. The digital me had stopped fighting. He was lying on the floor, his eyes rolling back. The man with the cable stood over him, looking not at his victim but at the camera. The man leaned in close to the lens. For the first time, I saw his face. It was me. But it was a version of me that was old, decades older. His skin was like parchment, his eyes recessed into dark hollows. He looked at the camera and smiled. "Data doesn't lie, Mark," he whispered. The sound came through the office speakers this time, clear and resonant. "The system just finds the most efficient outcome, and you were a redundant variable." The pressure on my throat tightened. The world started to fade to gray. I looked at the glass wall of my office, out toward the dark, silent woods of the Pacific Northwest. I saw the mist creeping up the slope. I saw the trees standing like sentinels. I realized I wasn't the architect. I was the bug. Then the pressure vanished. I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air, my lungs burning. I lay there for a long time, the cold concrete of the office floor pressing against my cheek. I waited for the man to walk through the door. I waited for the pixels to finish flaking away. But the house was silent. I slowly sat up. The temperature had returned to normal. I looked at the office door. It was solid, shut, and locked. I looked at the monitor. The screen was black, no signal. I stood up, my legs like jelly. I walked to the window. The sun was starting to rise, the first pale light of dawn cutting through the fir trees. Everything looked normal. The mist was exactly where it should be. I walked out of the office. The hallway was empty. The NVR was still unplugged. I went to the kitchen. The counters were clean. The pantry door was shut. I tried the front door. It opened with a smooth, heavy click. I walked out onto the porch, the cold morning air hitting me like a physical shock. I stood there for a long time, just breathing, watching the light change on the driveway. I felt a sense of profound, hollow exhaustion. I didn't stay to pack. I got into my car and drove. I didn't stop until I was in the middle of Seattle, surrounded by the noise of traffic, the smell of exhaust, and thousands of people. I checked into a hotel, a place with no smart tech, no security cameras, just a simple brass key and a heavy bolt. It's been 2 weeks since that night. I haven't gone back to Blackwood Drive. I hired a company to clear out my things and put the house on the market. I told them to keep the security system, to just leave it there. I tried to explain it to a therapist, but the words felt like sand in my mouth. How do you tell someone that a camera recorded your own death while you were still alive? How do you tell them that the digital world is more real than the one we touch? I'm living in a small apartment now in a building built in the 1920s. The walls are thick plaster, the floors are creaky oak, and there isn't a single piece of smart technology in the place. I use a flip phone. I don't have a computer. I do my work in a public library on a machine that I don't own. I thought I was safe. I thought I had escaped the efficient outcome. But 3 nights ago, I was walking past a shop window downtown, an electronics store. They had a row of security cameras on display, all of them pointed at the sidewalk. I caught a glimpse of myself on one of the monitors. In the reflection of the shop window, I was alone on the sidewalk. But on the monitor, I saw a man walking right behind me. He was tall, thin, and he was carrying a coil of cable. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. I walked until my feet bled, until I was in a part of the city I didn't recognize, until the sun came up. I realized that the Sentinel system didn't create the impossible. It just revealed it. We think we're the ones in control. We think we're the ones observing the world. But we're just data points in a system we don't understand. And once the system notices you, it never stops monitoring. I spend my days in parks now, sitting on benches. Where there are no cameras, I look at the sky. I look at the birds. I try to stay in the present, in the reality that I can feel. But every time I see a lens, on a phone, on a building, on a car, I feel that cold draft. I feel that phantom pressure on my throat. I know that somewhere on a server I can't access, in a buffer that never clears, the man with the cable is still walking. He's moving through the hallway. He's turning the handle. He's smiling at the lens. And the worst part, the part that keeps me from ever truly closing my eyes. I've started to recognize him. He's not an older version of me. He's the version of me that stayed in the house, the version of me that the system chose. And I'm just the glitch that hasn't been deleted yet. The weight of that realization is a slow burn horror that doesn't go away. It's a quiet, persistent dread that colors every interaction, every moment of solitude. I look at people on the street and I wonder, are they the original or are they the efficient outcome? How many of us are just the leftover data, wandering around in a world that has already replaced us? I've started to notice other things too, small things. The way the shadows in my apartment don't always align with the furniture. The way the time on my analog watch is sometimes a few minutes behind the clock on the wall. The way the silence in my room feels recorded. I don't look at my reflection anymore. I've covered the mirrors in my apartment with old newspapers. I don't want to see who's standing behind me in the glass. I don't want to see the pixels flaking off my skin. The silence of the Pacific Northwest was what I wanted. I thought it was a sanctuary. But I realize now that the silence wasn't the absence of sound. It was the sound of a system waiting. It was the hum of a lens focusing. It was the cold, indifferent logic of a machine deciding what is real. I'm sitting in the library now, writing this on a piece of paper. It's the only way I know the words won't change. It's the only way I can leave a witness that isn't digital. If you're reading this, if you're listening to this, do me a favor. Look at your security cameras. Look at the app on your phone. Look at the way the image flickers when you move. And ask yourself, are you seeing your life? Or are you just watching a recording that is slowly, patiently, becoming the only reality that matters? Don't trust the lens. Don't trust the data. And whatever you do, don't turn around. Because the impossible recording isn't about what happened. It's about what's coming. And the system is always recording. I can feel the draft again. The library is air-conditioned, but this is a different kind of cold. It's a cold that smells like ozone and damp fir trees. I can hear a soft scraping sound coming from the stacks behind me. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I'm not going to look. I'm going to finish this sentence. I'm going to fold this paper. I'm going to walk out into the sunlight. I'm going to try to be real for one more day. But the screen in my mind is starting to glitch. The static is getting louder, and I can feel the phantom pressure of a cable around my neck, tightening with the inevitable logic of a final delete. I was never the architect. I was just a bug in the code. And the debugging is almost finished. I remember Blackwood Drive sometimes, the way the cedar smelled after a rain, the way the fog looked like a tidal wave crashing against the glass of the office. It was a beautiful house. It was a masterpiece of design. But it was also a trap built not of wood and stone, but of observation and probability. I wonder who lives there now. I wonder if they've kept the Sentinel system. I wonder if they've noticed the pantry door swinging open at 3:14 a.m. I wonder if they've seen me sitting on their sofa, staring at the kitchen. Because that's where I am, isn't it? In the world of the system, I'm still there. I'm part of the footage. I'm a ghostly indentation on the fabric of the sofa. I'm a scream caught in a 4K buffer. And as the me in this reality fades, I can feel the me in that reality becoming more solid. I can feel the texture of the sofa. I can smell the rain on the deck. The system didn't delete me. It just moved me to a different folder. I'm looking at the library window now. My reflection is thin, translucent, like a digital ghosting. Behind me in the reflection, I see the man with the cable. He stopped scraping. He's standing right there, his hands ready. He smiles. And for the first time, I smile back. Because data doesn't lie. And the efficient outcome is finally here. The sun is bright, the world is loud, and I'm ready to be disconnected. The library lights flicker, once, twice. Connection lost. But the recording goes on. It always goes on. I think about the isolation I wanted. I thought it meant being alone. I didn't realize that in the modern world, isolation is impossible. Every inch of our lives is mapped, tracked, and read. We are the most watched generation in history, and we've built the watchers ourselves. We've given them eyes that don't blink, memories that don't fade, and logic that doesn't feel. We think they're serving us. We think they're keeping us safe. But they're not. They're just sorting us. They're deciding which versions of us are worth keeping and which ones are just noise in the signal. I used to be an architect. I used to build systems. I thought I understood the rules. But the rules have changed. The lens is no longer a window, it's a filter. And once you've been filtered, there's no coming back. I can feel the pixels flaking off my hands now. They're floating away like gray ash, disappearing into the sunlight. It doesn't hurt. It just feels inevitable. I'm folding the paper now. I'm leaving it on the table. If you find it, don't look for me. Just look at your camera and hope the system likes what it sees. The scraping is right behind my ear now. The smell of ozone is overwhelming. The cold is deep, a mountain cold that never thaws. I'm going now. I'm going to join the footage. Goodbye, Mark. System override, operation complete. The world outside the library window is a blur of motion and light. People are walking by, their phones in their hands, their eyes on their screens. They're all being recorded. They're all being processed. They're all part of the stream. I wonder who will be the next glitch. I wonder who will see themselves screaming on a 4K monitor. I wonder who will realize that the impossible is the only thing that's true. The man with the cable reaches out. The static takes me, and the screen goes black. I am no longer the bug. I am the data. And data is forever. The silence of Blackwood Drive is calling. The Douglas firs are waiting. The mist is rising. And the sentinel is always watching. I can hear the blue light of the NVR humming in the dark. It sounds like a heartbeat. It sounds like a warning. It sounds like home. The transition is complete. I am the reflection in the shop window. I am the figure on the sofa. I am the scream in the buffer. I am the impossible recording. And I'm waiting for you to check your app. Motion detected, camera 1. I'm standing on your porch. Don't turn around. Just watch the screen. It's the only way to know I'm there. It's the only way to know you're still real. For now, the library chair is empty. The paper is on the table. The sun is setting. And the system is already choosing the next outcome. Efficient, logical, final. No signal. Searching for connection. Connection found. Welcome, user. Would you like to see the live feed? I know you would. We all would. Until we're the ones on the screen. Until the recording becomes impossible. And then it's too late. The static is gone. The image is clear. The man with the cable is smiling at you. And you're already screaming. You just can't hear it yet. Give it time. The system is never in a hurry. It has all the data in the world. And it has you. Always. Final log entry. User Mark. Status archived. Reason, system optimization. End of file.